glad Richard was wrong about winning, but he was kind enough to listen. And I don't have time to really talk about my election, but I think it is an American story. But Richard asked me to talk about my personal background. I am a kid from the Crenshaw district. I went to Dorsey High School. My parents, my father migrated from Texas in the 50s, as did my mother. They were trying to get away. She came from Georgia. They were very poor, and they were trying to get away from a lot of the racism that was rampant in the South. And the word in the South is if you came to California, even if you just had a few nickels in your pocket, you could find a job. So they did, separately, and they were fixed up. They got married exactly 9 months to the day from my birth. And I have an older sister. So just to tell you a little bit about my upbringing, because I think it did naturally prepare me to be a prosecutor. My parents were Southern Baptists. Southern Baptists, especially African American Southern Baptists, means you go to church on Sunday morning, you stay until the late afternoon, you go home for dinner, you come back on Sunday night, and you come back on Wednesday for prayer meeting. My father's whole thing was not what will you go to college? It was what college are you going to, and start thinking about that, which is an interesting conversation to have with a 5-year-old. But he was very strict. I stopped being invited to parties when he crashed one and turned on the lights to see if I was still there. I was not. This one particular party I had left with a guy and came back, and so that ended my party life as a teenager. But you know, I had a really good home. I'm really glad that my parents, they were very, very strict. No cell phones back then, so you just couldn't go anywhere. There was nowhere to go, and I was very grateful that they did instill these values. They always told me about respecting the law, respecting our country. They were very patriotic, and I think that really prepared me to be where I am today. The curious thing about my father, he did not live to see me elected, but he was always fascinated with elected officials. He used to collect the photographs of different elected officials. Like he would have a judge, he would have a councilman, he loved Tom Bradley, he loved Jimmy Hahn. So we had those pictures up in our dining room next to the family photos, and I think if he had lived to see me get elected, he would have been extraordinarily proud. Just to tell you a little bit about my election, I'm a career prosecutor. I never thought I was going to run for anything. Rubber's chicken dinners were not my thing. And a couple of years ago, or more than a couple of years ago, when I decided to take the leap to run, I knew I could run the office because I had been in it for so long. I had been in management steps, in management positions while Steve Cooley was there, and so I knew that part of it. But being out and about, I had to overcome some of my own introversion and really get out there. I was always so grateful when people responded like Richard and said, okay, I'll meet you for lunch and I'll introduce you to the people at my law firm. And so Richard was right. No one knew me. I was at one point 5th in fundraising. Things did not get off to a good start. And about 6 months into it, I had to part with my campaign consultant. And when he left, everybody left the campaign. And I thought, okay, this is really embarrassing. It's over. But that was not true. The departure of that team made way for the best team. My girlfriend, who I walked with every Saturday morning, who was an attorney, who I confided in as all this was going on, turned to me and said, give me a shot, I'll run your campaign. I knew she had raised 4 successful, beautiful children, that I had raised 3, and so that's really all you need to know about running things, is really if you, once you raise your children up. We had both been married to our respective spouses, a total of probably 65 years. We were both attorneys, and so I turned to her and said, what the heck? Her name is Terry Cody. She is here tonight, and I would ask her to raise her hand. Thank you again. So we put together a team of just really smart people led by a guy named Park Skelton. If you've ever met Park Skelton, his idea of dressing up is if he irons his Hawaiian shirt and shorts. That is dress up for Park. But the group was the smartest group, and we believed in you. We believed in the voters. We knew that we had a good shot at getting the LA Times endorsement. I knew I was going to raise a certain amount of money, not a lot, and we didn't have money for television or for radio, and we decided to go with mailers. You know, we figure people vote, still read their mail. And we were blessed when on Mother's Day, May 12th, 2012, the LA Times posted that they were endorsing me out of all of the candidates, and we knew then that we were on the right track. Just so you know, I was hoping to run to get into a runoff with the city attorney, and the voters shot them all and voted for me and put me in first place in the primary. And from there, we went on to win the election. My election is interesting in the sense that if you go to our website, our office has been in existence since 1850. There had never been a woman, there had never been an African American. My first order of business when I got elected was to order a toilet seat cover. I had a urinal, and I was afraid, you know, I go to evening events where I have to change it to diamonds, and, you know, evening affair, I was afraid I was going to drop an earring in that toilet, so that was the first thing I ordered, was a toilet seat cover. And, you know, hopefully it'll be used long after I'm gone. So I do want to talk to you about the DA's office. This is not my first time being here. I've listened to a lot of speakers here. I drop in on you from time to time. And most of the people you have here are, you know, council people and, you know, the mayor and really, you know, people don't know all that the LA County DA's office does. We're the largest prosecutor's office in the nation. There is no other office that is larger than ours. We've got 1,000 prosecutors. I just hired 34 more new prosecutors last month. We have a budget of about $364 million. We have 2,200 personnel. We have our own in-house police force. There are 264 sworn police officers. We have 20 satellite offices. We cover 2 islands, Santa Clemente Island and Santa Catalina. We cover 88 incorporated cities, and we cover 4,083 square miles. LA County is larger than the states of Rhode Island and Delaware combined. That's the territory. So what do we specialize in? We actually specialize in several things. We specialize in prosecuting sex crimes, family violence, hardcore gangs, any celebrities who are acting up, major narcotics, crimes against peace officers, organized crime, juveniles. We have a justice system integrity unit that prosecutes law enforcement officers if they break the law. We have a public integrity unit when, God forbid, an elected official breaks the law. We have a real estate fraud division, a healthcare fraud division, a public assistance fraud division, automobile insurance fraud division. You get the feeling that there's a lot of fraud out there, and you're absolutely right. We have a high-tech crimes unit that goes after people who steal through the internet, and I'll talk about that a bit. We staff a unit in Santa Monica that is a one-stop shop for those who have been sexually assaulted, so they don't have to go from the police station to the hospital to the DA's office. They go to one building, and that's Stewart House. It was just recently featured in the LA Times. We have a forensic sciences unit which contains a couple of prosecutors who actually prosecute doctors. Maybe yesterday you saw where we filed against a doctor whose patient died from liposuction because he was extreme to negligent to the point where it was a crime. We also go after doctors who overprescribe controlled substances without examining people, because we think that's also against the law and wrong, and we're pretty aggressive about it. We have a consumer protection unit, an elder abuse unit, a code enforcement unit, a white-collar crime unit. We have special projects that people don't know about. We actually have about 200 people that go into public schools once a week during their lunch hour and teach elementary school kids. I was a part of that project for 5 years. We talked to kids about basically leading a positive lifestyle and staying out of gangs and staying away from drugs, and why graffiti is wrong and piracy is wrong, and just a lot of things. And it's a very successful program. This year it's going to go nationwide. That's how successful it's been. We have, Terry is working for office now. She's now my community liaison, because I figured sometimes you want to call the DA's office and say, why isn't this particular issue being addressed in my neighborhood? Or someone to just get feedback on from what is the district attorney's office engaged in, what are we doing? I'm very proud, I was part of the group that started the animal cruelty prosecution program. I'm of the belief that if you would have hurt an animal, you probably would have hurt anything. And so we've been very aggressive about actually getting some state prison time on people who are involved in dog fighting and cockfighting and all of these disgusting things that are against the law. So what's happening in the justice system? I don't know whether you know it, but we just have undergone the biggest change in 30 years. It's called realignment. And realignment, the short answer for what that's about is a whole category of crimes, that used to get you housed in state prison. Now you're housed locally, and when the jails fill up, you're housed at home on an ankle bracelet. And the issue with that is that it was a quick change, and local law enforcement, you can see LAPD recently had to spend about $19 million in really policing people who are just recently paroled out into the streets with really inadequate supervision. And so we're worried about this because there is no mechanism in place to really find out, are we any safer? We're 2 years into this program, and we really don't know if we're any safer. The sense of it is, when I'm out in the community, is that people are starting to see more property crimes, car burglaries, and residential burglaries. We don't know, because county-wide and even statewide, there's no one really keeping track of what impact this new sentencing law is having on our safety. And I'm interested in seeing whether recidivism rates go down or up as a result of this. On top of that, I don't know whether you realize, but a bunch of courts got closed in June. June 1st, Malibu was closed, Huntington Park, the Kidman Justice Center, a bunch of courts got closed. So if you've got jury duty in the fall somewhere, I would give myself a little extra time, because you're going to be standing in line as they funnel more cases into the courtrooms that remained open. I'm worried because this means that there'll be a delay in justice, that there could be longer waits for us to get some of these cases to trial. I'm worried that prosecutors might feel pressured to plea bargain cases at a faster rate. I'm worried about victims and witnesses just darn right becoming disinterested because justice is just taking too long, and they have to take off from work, and it is extremely inconvenient if you've ever been a witness. And so we're working on taking a leadership role in figuring out how to perhaps do something to prioritize and peel some of those cases out of the criminal justice system so that we have room for the truly violent and dangerous and threatening people. So my goals for my administration are as follows. These are the things that all of us are working on in the office. We want to get accurate information on realignment. That's so that we can propose changes in the future if need be to the legislature. I don't like doing what's called Willie Horton politics, where you point to one case and say, see, here's the problem. Now, I think you have to be data-driven. You need to know what's going on in communities, and so we're working on getting accurate information. I want to save the taxpayers money by expanding alternative sentencing courts, which are courts for those who are mentally ill. We have a tremendous amount of people who are mentally ill, probably like 20 to 25% in the county jail system. And not all those people should be in jail. Some of those people need to be in hospitals or to have treatment. And it's expensive, and it's ineffective, and in many cases it's inhumane to treat people who have a mental illness as though they are a criminal. I want to aggressively go after those criminals who engage in credit card number theft. I have had my identity stolen twice, 3 times in the last 3 years. And it's all from using my card at a local restaurant and having it copied some kind of way, and the criminal just kind of goes out and tries to charge things to my account. Well, we think that we can do better in terms of catching these people and certainly preventing them from stealing. I don't know whether you're aware, for instance, in Southern California, there is one key that opens up pretty much 90% of the payment machines that are at your local gas station. One key. So if a criminal gets that one key, they can get in and put in what's called a skimmer and just quickly copy your card. So we are going to award a couple of gas station companies and American Express an award in a couple of months because they have taken an aggressive stance in doing something about that. They've changed the lock, which is great, and personalized it. But they've also instituted some measures that will help protect your credit card when you go to the gas pumps. And I want to expand the resources dedicated to environmental crimes. We have been sort of undercover in that effort, and so I've got an aggressive prosecutor in there who's doing her job to really go after them. But I want to talk to you about something that I think might be important to this group. About 3 years ago, I got a phone call from my nephew who lives in Florida. And my mother, who's 77 years old, lives alone here in Los Angeles. And he said, I want you to go check on Nana. Something has happened. When I got to my mother's house, she was on the phone with a guy who said he was a police officer in Europe. And he had convinced her that my nephew was in jail and needed to be bailed out, and that she needed to wire $3,000 to get him out. Despite the talk, and you can only imagine when you're a prosecutor's mother, how many times we talk about, don't talk to strangers, don't wire money, don't do this. Notwithstanding that, this criminal on the phone was so convincing to my mother, who just wants to help her beloved grandson, that she actually went to the bank, drew out the money, and wired it to him. When she got back home, she called my nephew, and he picked up, and she said, are you out of jail? And she says, well, he says, I never was in jail. The criminal called her from an identifiable phone, and she called the criminal back to ask, are you for real? And of course, when I came in, she was on the phone to him. We were lucky. We got her money back. We got her money back. But every time I tell this story at any group of seniors, there's always 1 or 2 people who have heard of this scam and have heard of people who have fallen for it. Our seniors sometimes are isolated. They aren't aware. This crook knew so much about our family that she was convinced he was legit. And the reason he knew so much about our family is because my nephew was on Facebook posting all of this information, including the fact that his aunt was a prosecutor, including a picture of his beloved grandmother who lives alone, including the fact that he had been traveling in Europe. the week before. And so the crook knew just enough to convince my mother that he was legitimate. So here's our goal, and it all started with my mother in the DA's office. We are going to be aggressive about warning every senior in LA County that we possibly can. Do not wire money. Do not give over any kind of money to anyone who says you want anything. Do not wire money to bail anybody out of jail. I did remind my mother that she always told me that if I got in jail, she would never bail me out. Why she was doing it for her grandson, but that's a whole other issue. But to warn people about the aggressiveness of these scam artists. They call your house, they call repeatedly, and they are really targeting our seniors. And we can absolutely put a stop to this crime by warning as many seniors as we possibly can by telling them the story about my mother, Addie, and what happened to her. So that is our fifth goal. We are actually going to be doing a public service announcement. You might get to see my mother on television, on some of these cable television shows. We're going to do it. She's going to tell her story. We're also going to be out in full force at as many seniors, targeting as many seniors as we can, partnering maybe with Meals on Wheels and letting people know about all of the scams that are out there for seniors. Now, notwithstanding the court closures, realignment, 2,200 prosecutors, and all of this frauds and scams, I want you to know, when you leave here, that your DA's office is in good shape. They are doing a great job every day when I come to work. And I am meeting with a group of prosecutors who are presenting cases to me and saying, this is what we've done, Jackie, and we're ready to go. We're ready to go. So give us the word, boss. I think to myself, thank God I have this job. Thank God I'm your DA, and I'm loving being your DA because I get to work every day with an incredible amount of heroes in suits. And that's really what the prosecutors in your county are. So I want to thank you very much for everybody who said they voted for me. Thank you for the food tonight. It was excellent. And thank you for the opportunity to come back and share with you my vision for the safety of your neighborhood.
Thank you. We have John Eisman and Ed Epstein. Do you have questions from the audience?
These are some samplings of some questions for you from the audience. Are you ready? First question, what do you see as your biggest challenge?
Well, how many people have seen 60 Minutes? Okay. So in 60 Minutes, when they cut from the commercial, there's that tick, 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 tick. Okay, that used to make me depressed when I had a bad job, because I always thought to myself, okay, it's Sunday night, Monday morning's coming, I don't want to go to work. Well, I don't have those issues anymore. But my biggest challenge is, I'm elected for a 4-year term, and I have a lot of things I would like to do. And yet, the clock is ticking. And so I feel like I only have minutes to do them. And that is the biggest challenge, is working with a big group of people and trying to get everything done that I would like to get done.
The next question is, there's a sheriff in Maricopa County, Arizona, who houses some prisoners in tents located in the desert. We have a lot of desert in our area. Why can't we do the same thing?
Because we're better than that, really. We're better than that. Here's what I'll say about LA County and about California, where we live. I'm really grateful that we live here. Because notwithstanding how frustrated we get with crime and criminals and whatever, we still have the most, in my opinion, the fairest, most humane criminal justice system around. And I'm very proud of the fact that we do our best to make sure that we've got the right person and that we get the right sentence. And so the sheriff in Maricopa County, he can have those lawsuits and all of that, but in our office, we're just going to do it the right way.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, the first question was from Bill Bernicow, the second question was from Donald Andrew.
Oh, you're outing them, okay.
Yes, so Wilma has a question.
Okay.
Do we have any law similar to Stand Your Ground in California?
It's so funny you talked about that. We don't have a statute, but we have case law. We have case law that is identical to the Stand Your Ground law. Florida was the first one to enact a statute in 2005, and then 21 states, 21 or 25 have followed suit. Well, we actually have case law here, and in cases where someone is claiming self-defense, the jury would get an instruction that said you do not have to retreat. So we do have case law that says you can stand your ground.
Robert Pecker asks, what do you plan on doing about gangs in the valley and in the county?
Well, we're very fortunate that gang crime has actually gone down. When I worked with Captain Mensah back in the 80s, things were so much worse. He worked in North Hollywood, I worked in San Fernando. North Hollywood was not a destination that it is today. You could not go there to eat dinner. You could not go to a theater there. There were a lot of people dying in the streets there. My first homicide case came out of North Hollywood. The Valley still has pockets of issues, but thanks to LAPD, thanks to community policing, thanks to the LA City Attorney's Office, and thanks to some very smart strategic prosecutions, we have actually done a good job of stemming the tide. Now, there are areas of improvement. Pomona is having an issue if you looked at the LA Times, and so we're going to be working on helping them. But we're doing much better in that area.
Now I have a series of anonymous questions.
Okay.
People will identify themselves. You mentioned about realignment, and a follow-up question that someone asked was, what can the DA do to punish people effectively if jail time is not available?
Well, that is the question. My idea is to try to peel off some of the lower level offenders out of those jail beds so that people stay in longer who should be there. That's my immediate solution. So in the next month, as I said, I will be implementing alternative sentencing courts, which will make more jail beds available. It's going to be difficult because if you don't punish people, with jail, they may not learn their lesson. And that's where we may need to go back to the legislature and Jerry Brown and say, you need to reverse some of this.
That leads into the next question. What substantive law changes do you advocate? Maybe a couple major changes you advocate, and what is the status of those changes that you'd like to see?
Well, one thing I think needs to be changed as of July 1st, people are being paroled without supervision by a parole officer. And we think that that ought to be changed. We think that when you first leave prison, at least for a year, you should be accountable to someone, and someone with the authority of the state. So we are looking for data so that we can propose to the governor and to the legislature that that be changed. I want to make sure that white-collar crime and identity theft, that you're still eligible to go to state prison for that, because I don't think ankle bracelets work in that situation. So we are looking at proposing a law to change that. And like I said, we're looking at the data so that when we go to the legislatures, they will listen.
And do you have any, are you advocating any procedural law changes?
Well, we've had a couple that have just not been successful this year, and we're hoping to reinstituting them later. There is an issue with juveniles and them being allowed to petition to get out of prison. These are crimes that were committed while they were juvenile and they're now adults. We think that there is a case law that said basically imprisoning juveniles for life without the possibility of parole is unconstitutional. So we are working on looking for a solution to that with regard to a lot of other crimes that juveniles are in. For instance, you know, if you're a juvenile and you're in for, you know, on a crime for 80 years, that's essentially life without the possibility of parole. But it's those type of things, but not necessarily related to realignment, or we're looking for any procedural changes.
What percentage of the cases that you prosecute are drug offenses?
I would say about 30%. We try to get people into drug court, into drug rehabilitation centers if they possess drugs, or if they're they sell a small amount of drugs. We really are much more enlightened about that. I can remember when I first started out, if you possessed a small amount of marijuana, you had to go to jail. Now it's a ticket. But if you have a drug problem, you want help, we really try to make sure you get that. But it's about 30%.
What percentage of cases end up going to trial in contrast to a plea bargain?
You know, it's probably less than 20% that actually go to trial. We don't have the resources to try everything. Most things settle before the preliminary hearings. Some people wait to the last minute, but that would be the percentage.
Okay, before we let you go, first of all, bring back to the Hall administration, you've got no questions on Lindsay Lohan tonight.
Thank you.
This is a serious group. Thank you. And Jules, where's Jules? We have
I got here late.
Okay. Now sir, could you please, Jules, could you please come up here? Okay, we're gonna end in a couple minutes, and everyone in the audience is welcome and encouraged to come up. Can you please control yourself? Thank you. Jules, what do you have?
Jackie,
I got here late.
first of all, I'm proud to get to you a limited edition. I happen to have another one of our SOHA cabinet. Thank you. So you're a very distinguished guest. So you don't have to put it on. I don't want you to mess up here. But we do have a drawing for Gelson's. We have 2 winners tonight. $25 gift certificate for each. So if you could pick my card, my ticket, I'd appreciate it.
While she's doing that, please, when you leave, please clean up, and please come speak to the district attorney if you have one-on-one questions.
Okay, Jackie.
517-455.
455. We have a winner. Come on, $2,500.
Jackie, wait a minute. That wasn't even close to my number. Okay.
Here's my question. Okay, sir. People were killed in the